I'll tell you what freedom is to me. No fear.
When do you think your first experience with white supremacy, when do you think that you had your first like acknowledgement or like, oh, white supremacy, like this is a thing?
That's a good question. This isn't the answer to that question, but the first time I was called the N-word was very meaningful to me. Sorry, I'm not answering your question.
You should totally answer the question.
I will, but I do. I feel like the first time I was called the N-word is is real, because I was definitely 5 or 6 years old on the playground, and I didn't know exactly why it was bad, but I knew it was bad just by the way that it was being said towards me. And then I also remember the conversation, like my parents having to like talk with me about it, and me having like questions, and them like just being like, that was really bad. And also they were pretty upset about it, as I would be if my kid came home and was like, somebody called me a nigger on the playground. I'd be like, what? But yeah, I think your question about white supremacy, yeah, I think I have a lot of examples where I'm like, in hindsight, I'm like, wow, there it was. That was white supremacy. But it's hard for me to recall like, what was the first moment where I was like, oh, white supremacy is a thing. I think I'm asking myself, like, when did I start to understand the difference between like racism, just racism period, and white supremacy? And I feel like that was honestly like in my late 20s. Not even until then did I start to really see the difference between racism and white supremacy.
Word. It's still interesting that the first thing that came to mind to you was the
N-word.
The N-word, and experiencing that on the playground. How old were you?
5 or 6. I want to say I was 5, but I think it was 6, because I was at Cheney Elementary School in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Shout out Ypsi, my lovable hometown. And my family, like the school, the playground was actually kind of in our backyard. Like we could walk to the school from our house where we lived at the time. And I was first grade. Miss Harris was my teacher. Love Miss Harris. She actually died when I was in her class when I was in first grade.
What? It was terrible.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was pretty terrible. It was a whole thing, and like I remember they read us this book.
What?
Like when she was gone. It kind of happened suddenly. Like she was sick. I think she had cancer, maybe lung cancer, but she basically was like in and out for a little bit, and then she was just like gone. And we had this white lady, Miss Harris was black. We had this white lady substitute. I think her name was Miss Boggs, started with a B. And they brought in this book to like read to us about like somebody's like rabbit dying, to like
terrible
to like help us process our teacher dying. Terrible. It was really sad.
That is terrible.
It was really, really sad. Yeah.
When I think about that question, when was my first? Because I think, when was my first experience or like acknowledgement of a white supremacy, or like, oh, this is the thing. Whether you remember the actual first moment or like just remember when like you cemented the concept, either or is totally cool. But for me it's crazy because I went through a couple of different thoughts and then landed on the like actual first moment, which is kind of wild to me, but like not wild, but just a very significant point in my life. Which that is the interesting thing to me, is that like there was this very significant point in my life And then it also just happened to coincide with the fact that I'm being introduced to this term, white supremacy, which is just interesting to think about in retrospect. But to answer the question, the first time I experienced the term white supremacy, just experienced it in general, was in college in Dr. Denard's class at Florida A&M University, FAMU. Shout out the Rattlers. That was like my first time experiencing it in his class. The class was, I might be butchering the name, but it was like racism, prejudice, and biases. And Dr. Denard just drilled into our minds, or just kept on like framing and reframing this question, or this like statement, which was like, if you don't understand white supremacy, nothing in this world will make sense to you. In fact, I'm actually giving you the more palatable way that he said it. What he actually said was, if you don't understand white supremacy, world domination, nothing in this world will make sense to you. Either way you take it, whichever side, or the palatable way, or the authentic way of him
with
saying
the domination.
With the domination, the emphasis,
Yes.
if you will.
Yes.
I think it's still like to have somebody confidently tell me that, it was just like, what's this person talking? Like, what are we actually talking about? And like, one thing I just appreciate about Dr. Denard is his delivery was always like, so like he would say something like that, like, if you don't understand white supremacy, world domination, nothing in this world will make sense to you. So then it leaves you on this island of like,
do I? Does nothing make sense
like,
to me?
Damn, does nothing make sense to me? Like, well, I thought a lot of things made sense to me.
I thought
like,
I understood the
What are we
words.
talking about? So then he would just start throwing in all these examples, and then he would hit you with, you don't got to believe anything I'm saying. Google it. Like, go research it yourself. Like, literally, don't listen to anything I'm saying. So I would be the student who would be like taking notes and like, yo, I'm about to Google this. I'm about to Google that. I'm about to Google this. And just a wealth of knowledge. But welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and all of those in between.
Or outside.
We're outside.
Or outside of a lady or a gentleman.
All those in between, all those outside, all of those in other universes, dimensions, time frames. What is up? Frequencies.
Yeah.
What's good? My name is Kevin. This is...
I'm Angela. What's up?
And you are watching the Untitled podcast.
Powered by the South.
Powered by the South. Hopefully by the end of this show, or hopefully by the end of us putting out to this show, or this episode, if you will, we'll have landed a name for the podcast. But that's where y'all come in.
Yeah, so we're thinking about two names, right? One is Stop White Supremacy, a podcast about everyday people disrupting white supremacy. The other option is the N-word.
Yeah.
A podcast about disrupting white supremacy. I like them both. I'm down for both. Would love to hear what y'all think.
I also like them both. Would also love to hear what folks think. I will say, just like the whole Dr. Denard thing, there's like a very provocative delivery. There's a very like, ooh, what the hell is happening here type delivery.
Yeah.
And then there's a more palatable, if you will. To some, I guess, because I feel like saying stop white supremacy is like, whoa.
It is so us to be like, stop white supremacy is the most palatable version.
Stop white supremacy is very easy to digest, right?
Everyone, that's like very mainstream, right?
Hilarious. That is hilarious.
But yeah, what's up? This is our first official episode.
First official episode.
Really excited to be continuing to dig into this with y'all.
Yeah.
As we said, this is a show about disrupting white supremacy, everyday people, everyday situations, all throughout our lives. Yeah.
Yes, this is the first official episode. One question I have is, why do you think now is the time for us to be launching this podcast? What would you say is the reason for the now? Because I think, the behind that question is this reality that you and I have had this idea for quite some time. We have wanted to do something of the sort of a show, podcast, situation for some time. Why do you think we're doing this now?
Well, one reason I think we're doing it now is because we feel the energy and the enthusiasm. I think one of the important parts of any creative process, our creative process especially, is just like doing the work when it feels right, when it feels good. There's all this like urgency and like, especially with social media and like, look at this brand, they're doing that. Look at this company, they're over here, they're doing that. Like, we need to get there, we need to go, we need to do this. And like, that can almost be a distraction and can like kind of taint or distort the creative process. That doesn't mean like, it's always good to like try and put things out there, but I think it feels right now. It feels good. It feels like this is a moment for us to be talking our shit and doing it with the people that we think are dope, that we are in community with. And really, I also think that this is a really important time to be a resource for people that are just the reality of the bullshit that we've been fed, mostly by white supremacy, and capitalism and patriarchy. There's all one nice little umbrella there. But like the bullshit that we've been fed, so many people are like, this does not make sense. Like, whether you say it out loud, you feel it in your body, it's just like, nah, like I'm not doing it. This doesn't align with me. This isn't how I want to feel every day. This isn't how I want my children to feel. And we, in our work, in our life, in our relationships, and everything that we kind of spend all of our time on, I feel like we are constantly doing that, disrupting, having that reality and trying to make shifts. And I'm just really excited about being able to be a resource to share that with people who are in their lives trying to do the same.
And I feel like for all my real niggas, one thing, and for the framing of being a resource, there's a definition for capitalism. Boom. There's a definition for patriarchy. Boom. And there's a definition for, what was the other one? White supremacy. Boom. Okay. Yes. Being a resource and talking our shit. Just to be clear about, what talking our shit looks like, and you could totally agree or edit, disagree, however you feel. Talking our shit, to me, one thing that comes up, well, several things came up when you said talking our shit. One, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Just a whole bunch of energy.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that came up is like, oh, people need to understand what we mean by talking our shit. And to me, what that means is like saying what needs to be said, but isn't being said.
For sure.
Because of whatever reason. I think for us and for this podcast, we know what that reason is.
Yeah.
The reason is white supremacy. The reason is, wanting to protect the establishment, this idea that white is better, wanting to protect white dominance. And I know to like anybody who might just be coming up on these definitions for the first time, like they're like white dominance. Yo, this dude sounds crazy. But also there's like a bit of nervousness you're experiencing when I say that. It is also a real thing though. You know, there's a real thing going on where there is a dominant narrative, and that dominant narrative is projecting a theme, and that theme is that white is better. I do want to jump into the definition of white supremacy. Yeah, totally.
Before you do that, because you were talking about like the uncomfortable feeling that comes up when people hear things like white dominance, and it made me. I was listening to the radio this morning, and one of the like DJs in South Florida, honestly I'll remember his name in a second, but he was talking about how John Legend was saying that Donald Trump is racist and all that stuff, and the guy was this black guy. He was kind of like, I don't know, like John Legend saying Trump's racist. Wow, he's got a lot to say. Like almost like, why would you say that about Trump? And it made me think like, why are there some like black people? It's not just black people. Why are there some black people that are like so quick to like excuse Trump's very blatant and obvious racist personality, identity, values? And I think it's because people don't want, there's a part of us that doesn't want to admit that the shit is what it is. Yeah. Like you don't want to believe that white dominance is actually, the idea of white dominance is actually influencing our lives on a day-to-day basis, how we think, how we engage with the world. There's just like this feeling that's like, nah, that can't be it. That's not really what it is. It's like, nah, nigga, it totally is. Yeah. Like, it's not your fault. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It's just, it is what it is. But I'm just really fascinated by like this idea of like, I don't want that to be true. So I'm going to act like it's not true. It's like, nah, it's very much true and real.
But the irony in that is you could believe that whiteness is the dominant idea. You could believe in white supremacy when it shows up in like, oh, who's this police officer gonna believe? Yeah. The black man or the white man? Like, if we literally asked America that question, I guarantee it'd be like 95 overwhelming % would be like, oh yeah, the police officer would believe the white man before they believe the black man.
Of course.
That right there is white supremacy. But like, if you could believe white supremacy there, then like, why couldn't you see it in like a Trump? Or like, why could you not attack it in a Trump? And I think that's part of the like unpacking of white supremacy that I think everyday people need to do, see, acknowledge, is that it's not even just the fact that we're just that by definition it's like white is better, white is dominant and the overruling narrative, if you will. It's the fact that we will also protect it.
Yes, preserve it.
We will also preserve it. We will die on the sword to make sure
it's there, it's sustained,
that it is sustained. And that to me is one of the like wildest things that I feel like I had to uncover for myself or realize for myself when I started like unpacking white supremacy in my own life and my own experiences and behavior, is like, damn, bro, like your reaction is built to protect this shit, bro. Like it's that is the most wildest part to me, because it will automatically, like, there's a number of people that like could be listening to us and they're like tuning us out a bit because of the like the desire to protect white supremacy,
100%,
to protect this idea. And it's not even like, you know, pointing fingers or being like, oh, motherfucker, you love this white supremacy shit. No. It's more so to be like,
survival.
You should understand that there is a design that you are carrying that was given to you by society, by the overruling class, if you will. That's like, white is better. Protect that shit by any means. And the I think the like saddest part about that shit is that it also equals your value is less. So not only are you protecting white supremacy,
You're also maintaining the reality that you are less than.
you're literally co-signing. You're like, yeah, I'm lesser than the white dominant power. It's just, it's
Okay, so yeah, let's get into
it's
the
terrible.
definition.
So we get into the definition. This is the Cambridge definition of white supremacy. So like giving you a definition, not to just be like, oh, we some niggas up here just talking about this shit. More so giving like, hey, like you could look this up. This is literally defined by smart people. I think
We're smart, but yeah.
Cambridge.
In
Would you say Cambridge is some smart niggas? I'm not trying to just give them the cosign that they smart.
Yeah, I don't know if we should give Cambridge the cosign, but we could use their definition.
We'll use their definition. We won't cosign Cambridge.
Because who knows who's all...
They probably sipping the tea and the Kool-Aid too, bro.
They probably got their money from slavery. Just
Cambridge sounds like some racist. You're right.
It sounds like it's been around long enough
to
have
slavery money
come from
literally
plantation.
Literally, they're still literally. So their plantation definition, white supremacy. What did you say?
You said their plantation definition.
Yeah, because they're
plantation funded definition.
Their plantation funded. Exactly. Their plantation funded definition. White supremacy is the belief that white is better than other groups and should have more power, authority, and rights. The first thing that comes up for me is like, someone has established that this is a real thing by giving it a definition. Because if it wasn't a real thing, it wouldn't have a definition. It also would probably be described as something that isn't real. If it,
like a mythology or
right.
something. Yeah.
What comes up for you?
Well, what comes up for me is, one, we have to really problematize this idea of like whiteness, period. Like, and I think that this is a conversation for a whole other episode, honestly. But like, you know, whiteness has been created and has shifted. What it means to be white has shifted as in our society over the decades. And there's lots of research, lots of examples to show like people from Europe, some of them were considered white, some of them were not considered white. People, you get in and out basically. So that's the first thing I was like thinking about. I was like, we have to just be like, well, let's just be clear that what it means to be white is quite mythical in and of itself. Like, mythical isn't the right word. I would say it's malleable, right? It moves, it can fluctuate, it shifts, it's movable.
It's not a solid definition.
It is not a solid definition.
Whiteness.
Right. There is white culture, and I think that white people especially are hesitant to say that there is white culture, but there definitely is.
I'm laughing because I'm like, yo, Angela just literally said white people are mythical creatures. Just want to confirm or deny.
I said whiteness, okay? I said whiteness is mythical.
Word.
It's movable. Anyways, the other thing that comes up to me, and when I'm talking to people about white supremacy, I talk about it as like it's the idea that whiteness is normal, is the norm. It is the center. It is the baseline with which everything else is measured against, right? So like, white is the standard. If you're on one side or the other white, that determines your closeness to whiteness, your relationship to whiteness is what determines your experience of any particular situation. That to me is like the grounding of white supremacy. And it makes me think, the example that I think about is like growing up, when I went to high school, it was like a predominantly white high school. Most of my friends were white. And I remember having all types of body image issues. I developed an eating disorder because my body did not look like those girls' bodies. I was like a very normal shaped, 15, 16, 17-year-old black girl, but my body just did not look like theirs. And so I constantly was just like, I am not normal. I'm not this thing that I'm not the standard. And it's not like anybody said, those white girls' bodies are the standard.
It's just the tone in the air.
It's just the tone in the air.
Yeah.
It's just the idea that like, these are the people these are the bodies that the jeans fit.
Are normal.
These
It's
are
like
the bodies
walking,
that the shirts fit. These are the bodies that are able to meet within the general standard of they can just take something off the rack versus like going to the back of the rack or going to a special store or whatever. Like, it's not like somebody was saying like your body is different, their body is normal. It was literally just the energy within the society, my experience of my day to day.
It's the same way you could walk in a room and it's like, oh shit, why is everybody upset? Or damn, everybody's turned.
Yes, you feel it.
There's a lot of fun happening here. You can experience a culture that is telling you that your body is not the normal, your body is different, period, the end. That's definitely giving white supremacy. And I think that's the beauty of what this podcast is going to have to offer. Totally discussing different ways that we disrupt white supremacy, discussing different ways that we've experienced disrupting white supremacy, discussing parts of our experience. I feel like thinking about disrupting white supremacy, I feel like that's going to be a very high value part of this podcast, is like, having conversations about how we actually disrupt white supremacy. What does that even look like? And I feel like that's important for all humans, to see what's possible. I think oftentimes we don't know what's possible until we see what's possible. And then after seeing what's possible, you're essentially normalizing that experience. One thing that's popping into my head is like NBA players right now, freaking what's his name, Wemby from the Spurs. He's like what, 7'6"?
Yeah. Oof.
Like that. There was a certain point in time where that was not normal.
It's not real.
That's just
It's not
not a real thing in the NBA. And now that's like a standard to have like a 7-footer.
Everybody's looking for that 7'6" player.
Bruh, you're 7'6". What are we talking about?
What are we talking about? Very much like baby giraffe size.
Playing athletic sport. Like, who cares about what sport? Your point is, we have to normalize disrupting white supremacy in order for us to actually dismantle white supremacy.
Yes, amen.
And I think that that's an overall goal of this podcast.
And I think that that's also why it's important, like why we're spending a whole entire episode talking about what white supremacy even is. And honestly, we could do this for hours, right? Because it's so layered. But I think that it's just, people think, and this is also kind of the mind fuck of white supremacy, is like, at some point they were like, okay, y'all got, maybe they have a point here. This is racism, right? KKK, slavery, coloreds only.
Yeah.
Racism, right? That's racism. We are done with racism. And so then you get, people going to school being like, oh, well, that's racist, but I'm not racist because I I don't practice those things, but the reality is that like white supremacy it's the ocean that we're all swimming in, right? It's almost like you have to swim in the other freaking direction and then get all of your niggas to swim in the other direction, the opposite direction of the current, in order to shift it to go back to another way. We're not going to, it's not like we're going to just say one act of racism, one racist law.
And so it's interesting. I love the way you broke it down there, because it's like racism is the like, and if you will, racism is like the end product,
the outcome
of white supremacy. One of the many outcomes of white supremacy.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, it's like, well, of course you can say, well, I'm not racist because I didn't do this one particular outcome. So racism is a lot easier to like fight and go back and forth on. But when you talk about white supremacy, it's the roots. It's that ocean you're talking about. It's like white supremacy is the reason why you're even experiencing this particular act of racism. So if you focus on white supremacy and the narrative, the definition of white supremacy, the belief that white is better than other groups and should have more power, authority, and rights, it's like, wait, well, what the fuck? Like, what are we talking about there? Why do they start the game with 20 points and I start with 0 or even sometimes -15? What are we talking about there?
But I think also, because I was thinking like black people that perpetuate white supremacy all the time, or non-black people, but, or people of color that, perpetuate white supremacy, they might not say that, they might not say that like white is better than other groups, but they do operate from a mental framework that has whiteness as normal, as the dominant thing, and that we're all in relationship to it, right? And so I think one of the things that really helped expand my perspective about white supremacy is thinking about white supremacy culture,
right?
And so I want to share, if I can, a definition and some examples of white supremacy culture. And I got this information from the folks at Can't Stop, Won't Stop and our homie Greg Sandana. They have an incredible organization where they do a lot of work with facilitation and transformative justice work. But this is an example of some of the work that I did with them a couple of years ago. White supremacy culture refers to the dominant, unquestioned standards of behaviors and ways of functioning embodied by the vast majority of institutions in the United States. And so it goes on to say like, what the standards are, but I think that these examples are gonna like, it just really helped me be like, oh shit, this is way more than just like the black people don't get paid the best.
Right.
Like it's like things like perfectionism, sense of urgency, defensiveness, quantity over quality, worship of the written word, like that writing things is the most important thing. If it's written down, it means gospel, right? There's only one right way to do things. Either or thinking, power hoarding, a fear of conflict, individualism, that progress always has to be bigger, more, excess. This idea of objectivity and the right to comfort, right? So like if you've ever worked in a nonprofit or even a like movement, social justice organization, you've seen all of these things show up in a very crazy way. Like it's so just embedded in everything that we do, right? Like I think about the sense of urgency and the fear of conflict as things that are stuff that I experience all the time, right? And like the fear of conflict especially is so toxic because it keeps us separate from each other.
Right.
Because there's gonna be conflict. We're gonna hurt each other. There's gonna be harm, right? But the fact that white supremacy has made it so that we don't know how to be in conflict or disagreement with each other, or almost that like, so we shouldn't do it.
Right.
It just keeps us so far apart.
And I think when you're able to see that, it's you begin to understand that like conflict is less about punching somebody in the face or making somebody cry.
Right.
And it's more about, how do we manage this disagreement and come to an understanding, or at the very least, an understanding that you have your idea, I have my idea, and we're coming to a close with this particular debate, if you will.
Right. Or that we have a difference in opinion or different perspectives. It doesn't mean that we have to be in separation or against each other or in, agitated. Like there will be conflict, but it doesn't mean that we have to be hating each other.
But also just in just a simple ass way. White supremacy is your boss deciding that he's going to order Arby's for the entire staff.
Right.
And that entire staff happening to be a rainbow coalition of people of color.
Yes.
A coalition of all types of people. And it's like, fam, you just made the decision to order Arby's for the whole team versus like, hey, guys, all folks on the team, what are y'all thinking about having for lunch today? Should we have Arby's? Or holla at the Jamaican folks. Or holla at the Indian food.
Or be like, here's enough pay so that you can order what you want to eat.
That part.
Or even just be like, hey, we're buying lunch. Here's a voucher, or here's, cash or whatever. Also, shout out Arby's. I don't want to hear any Arby's slander on the show.
Ciao. And how quickly this podcast becomes a debate about Arby's and other food options.
Which fast food's appropriate?
We will not be striking down against Arby's.
Because I can just see the Arby's slander now.
Yo, shout out. It's funny because I don't want to shout out Arby's because no. But I do. It's funny to think about Arby's. I don't even know why I said Arby's, but it's ironic that my first interaction with Arby's was on a like 3rd or 4th grade, maybe even like a 5th grade trip to a golf course. And
stopping for a little fast food on the way home.
No. We were in like, it was part of the field trip experience.
Oh, you had to go to Arby's.
Was eating Arby's at the golf place, like
at the golf course.
It's a field trip of kids. They're not going to stop at Arby's with a busload of kids.
We used to do that all the time.
Okay, Ypsilanti. So, on this field trip, literally golfing, I'm like, oh, okay, golfing's cool, whatever. Like, this is interesting. Cool. I've never done this before. I'm like starving. They literally bring out Arby's. And when I tell you, I was so fucking hurt. Like, when I tell you, I was like, wheat bread, turkey slice, like what the fuck? So I'm starving today. I'm literally not eating.
You're not gonna eat it.
What?
There's no way.
My old little Haitian 5th grader ass
Absolutely
was not about to eat Arby's, and that's white supremacy.
Oh man,
forcing all of the kids in this elementary school to eat Arby's. Bro, like, it's a whole diaspora of kids here. like, why are you making us eat wheat bread,
where did
cheese?
Arby's come from? He clearly has a
because I have trauma to release. This is what this podcast is about. It's about us releasing our trauma.
Oh, that is so funny. That's hilarious.
So no shout outs to Arby's.
No shout outs to Arby's.
But
yeah,
disrupting white supremacy. What are some ways that you think you yourself, or maybe we, disrupt white supremacy?
Well, I think the first thing I'll say is that it requires paying attention to how white supremacy is showing up in your life. the way that you view the world, your interactions with people at the grocery store, your interactions with people, you know, in terms of like what you think is and is not appropriate behavior. There's a whole bunch of stuff about hair. I actually think that one of the first ways that I started to disrupt white supremacy was with my hair. When I think it was 2005. I was in college and started to start to like grow out my relaxer, and started to wear my hair more like curly, more just natural. And, you know, I definitely remember moments of like, especially with my dad at times, like, are you really going to wear your hair like that? Like,
yes, nigga.
yeah, like, yeah, I am. And like, no, I don't need to straighten my hair. It looks good just how it is. This is how it is naturally. So like, it's just the way that you see hair that's like straight, that's good hair. Hair that's wavy, that's good hair. That is not just racism. That is not just colorism. That those things are the outgrowth, the outcome of this idea that white characteristics are the good ones, the normal ones, the best ones, the ones to be strived for. And that's why we get to a place where people are like, oh, well, if you have skin that's darker or lighter, or you have skin that's lighter, then you are better, get more access, get more privilege, get more benefit of the doubt in your conversation. So it's like disrupting white supremacy. First, you have to start to see all of the ways that it's percolating in your life, the decisions that you make, the people that you choose to talk to, whether you grab your purse or you don't when you're walking around. Like, when do you lock your doors versus when you don't lock your doors?
One of my favorite, I appreciate you saying the hair piece, because to me there's, one, appreciate you saying that, like, you have to figure out ways to actually see it, because like, you can't attack something that you don't see.
Yes.
So in order to dismantle, disrupt, eliminate white supremacy, you have to actually sit back and study the way it shows up. Not study by literal academia's way of, defining it. I more so mean like have a bit more of awareness, a framework that you're like trying to read it in the room. But I appreciate you naming the hair piece, because one of the ways that I love disrupting white supremacy is like visuals, like the mere existence of your hair being the way that they're saying not to wear it causes so much disruption, causes so much error, reset, that like, it's like, wow, I hardly even have to do anything, but I just have to show up and it's impacting you. I love that shit. And I don't
have to say anything. I can just
I don't have to
show
say
up
shit.
with my
I just
hair
show
looking exactly how it does,
and it's
how it grows straight out my head.
So much disruption in your existence right now that you have to recompute, refigure out how you're going to engage, and you might actually look silly in the process. But I also resonate with this like hair story too, because I'm Haitian, growing up Haitian. My mother was very like strict about me growing my hair out, so she always wanted me to have a buzz cut. So at some point when I was whether it was Dr. Denard's class or Dr. Bell's class, shout out FAMU professors in the psychology department, because y'all are fire. At some point I was like, oh, that's why my mom wanted me to cut my hair, always keep my hair cut, because she somehow thinks that is better, and to be better is like this closeness to whiteness, and like she's like, in her eyes, it's like she's giving me a chance or an opportunity. But in that moment, in that experience where I'm like politicizing myself or getting politicized, learning about blackness, I'm like, oh, nah, fuck that. I'm actually going to grow my hair out and still go on and do successful things, still go on and flourish. despite this narrative that's like, I have to have my hair cut, I have to have a brush cut if I want to be successful. So there's just so many different ways you could disrupt white supremacy. But the irony that you and I both have this, or not even irony, because we're both black.
I think a lot of people have the hair story.
Exactly.
I think, well, one, I think hair culture is a way that we as a collective have started to disrupt white supremacy across the board. Like now, like
in a comfortable way.
The example that I gave was like 2005, right? And I remember that being is like the beginning of like go natural, right? Energy, and then in the culture, right? And then now we're at the point where we have laws like the Crown Act that is literally passed on the federal level and on the state level, where it's like it is now legally you can't discriminate against somebody if their hair looks black or looks more I actually don't know what the language is, but basically for your hairstyle, if it's in locks or if it's a fro or whatever.
Is that federal? Like,
I'm
is
pretty
that
sure
across the board, or
I'm pretty
in certain
sure
states?
You know, we have to I know that it has been introduced, and I want to say that it has passed, but actually in hindsight maybe it's just been voted on a couple of times, and we just have to see if it actually is. We'll get the deets for you to figure out if it's actually a law yet. So
just a little back burner. Because we are the creators, producers, the subjects on camera, we can totally insert all of the clarity that we need to post edit.
Yeah.
So we'll have that answer on this clip. I'm actually gonna stop doing that now because we're getting you indoctrinated with the process and themes and the way we're gonna run this podcast. So now that you know, I'm not gonna say it no more.
I like that. I like it.
It's
Anyways,
cool. It's just getting a little corny.
I think too. Also want to like give some grace to our parents as well, because
they're trying their best.
And also, they're
trying to make sure we don't get shot in the streets by the police.
This is literally how they were able to survive.
Right.
This is literally that's what white supremacy does. Like, if you don't want to die, you will comply. If you want to get to some level of success, and again, white supremacy gets to tell you what success is. Right? We decide success for you is for you and your little children is going to college, getting a job, and getting a house, and paying into this economy that we have structured to keep us up here and you down here. And maybe and also success is you thinking that you can get up here, even though we've literally made trapdoors, so there's no way for you to get up there. Like, our parents, they told us to keep our hair straight and cut, because that is literally the only, like, their parents came from, if you put your eyes up, you're gonna get shot and dragged in the street and hung. So like, they're like, we are, not to be like ancestors' wildest dreams or whatever, but like, we are iterating on their little disrupting of white supremacy was bell bottoms. And an afro, maybe, right? And then when they got to corporate, they were like, okay, we're going to cut it, whatever. Our disrupting of white supremacy now is like, nah, I'm wearing my afro at the corporate meetings, and I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like, and still, we have to be honest about the fact that we're still inserting this corporate ladder as a part of the success, so it's just layered. And so grace to our parents, and also grace to us as we're continuing to see how it shows up, because there are so many moments where you're like, damn, is that white supremacy? Is that anti-blackness, which is also an outcome of white supremacy? Am I being anti-black based because I am still sick with these ideas of white supremacy that I thought that I was unlearning all these times in all these ways? One
thing I always think about my own processing and dismantling of white supremacy and like my own experience and my thought patterns, if you will. And one thing I always think about is that, like, in a lot of ways, we have to de-escalate, alleviate this feeling of like this podcast is gonna make you feel like, damn, am I the problem? Like, damn, am I out here fucking shit up? And like,
Kinda, yeah.
and that's okay.
It's okay.
It's not like, okay, you're the problem, now we gotta throw this huge rock at your head. Nah, it's like, yo, now that we're having this conversation, you can choose which side you want to actually be. You want to be on the right side of history, or you want to be on the continuation of being a problem. Another way to say or reframe what I'm trying to say here is that, like, it's less about pointing fingers and more about knowing that there's an elephant in the room that we should discuss for the benefit of ourselves, the way we value ourselves, our community, and just so many other parts of life. And like, I literally, like, as I like say that, I'm going back to Dr. Denard and him being like, if you don't understand white supremacy, nothing in this world will make sense to you.
It's so true.
If I don't understand white supremacy, I can't value myself on a higher level, or on a level that is basic human rights, basic human needs. If I can't value myself, how can I love on my wife, love on my kids, give value to other people, see other people as humans trying their best? I appreciate you saying grace to our parents, because that's some real shit. It's like, on any moment where I might bring up my parents on this podcast, it's not me crucifying them on the cross. It's more so like giving context to my story and how I got here, and also like being like, oh, I see you, Mom. It's not about you hating me and being like, oh, fuck this old nappy-headed little kid and him growing his hair out.
His hair is ugly.
His hair is ugly. You ugly ass nigga if you grow your hair out. It's not that she's saying that. It's more so that she's literally like, yo, if you keep your hair short, that might actually keep you from getting shot at by the police. That might allow you to get into this school, get a job, have people treat you better. So like, I say that for the alleviation of this podcast making you feel like you're the problem. And more so like, hey, two things we should really be focusing on: dismantling and disrupting white supremacy, and creating a higher sense of value for ourselves and our communities. Now that we are aware that there's this
thing that's telling us to devalue ourselves.
This
and all these
system,
I think
that's literally like devalue yourself.
I really like how you connected the, like, if you don't understand white supremacy, none of this will make sense to you, to like being able to be in a loving relationship with your partner and your family. Because yes, you need to understand white supremacy. Like, it's understanding how white supremacy shows up in our job, at the workplace, in our schools, in the political system, right? Like, that's one level. But taking it to be able to be like, damn, if you don't understand white supremacy, you will not, especially if you're a not white person, but even white people, right? If you don't understand white supremacy, you cannot see yourself as the full human in your beauty and your glory and your godliness that you are. Because white supremacy is inherently requires there to be a less, that it's so narrow. White supremacy, the idea of it cannot hold the majesty of who we are as humans. It just cannot. And so I think that, like, yeah, if you don't understand white supremacy, none of this will make sense to you, including who you are as a human being. You won't even understand your own humanity if you don't understand how white supremacy works and how it is showing up to make you think less of yourself and less of your humanity.
Very excited about this podcast. Very excited about, and to just be clear, this podcast is us just being very clear about what we're good at and what we're not good at, and also being like, we're going to give this podcast thing a try and see where it lands us. So you may get like 7 episodes out of us, maybe 10. And at that point, I think we're going to regroup, figure out what makes the most sense for us, if this is something we should continue doing or not. But I say that to say, to give more context to this podcast, where we're coming from and shit, like who we even are. So there's a lot more that, you know, you all should anticipate, and a lot more that we're going to deliver, if you will. I do appreciate our business, and, you know, I think the mere existence of our business is a very, like, disrupting of white supremacy. And, you know, I think we'll definitely dive deeper into our stories as we build this podcast. But, you know, part of the reason why we started this South, I know in my experience, is working for nonprofits, working for grassroots organizations, but primarily working, I mean, from my experience, working with, you know, nonprofits, the AFL-CIO, working with Forward.us, all organizations doing great work, while also being organizations that can be challenged, / you know, held accountable for various different ways. But in working for these organizations, I think it really hit me that you know, the culture of white supremacy actually it struggles to manage a person like me. The culture of white supremacy struggles to figure out how to utilize this very athletic person, and what type of position or where on the field that this athletic person should be. And I think for me, there was this awareness of like, damn, I actually want to do a lot. I want to be the graphic designer, the brand developer, you know, the comms nigga, the messaging nigga, the digital strategist. I want to do a lot of things. So I think the best thing that I should actually do right now, and the unfortunate reality of white supremacy, is that I have to leave these organizations and actually start something new. And you know, I think for the both of us, it was this realization of our powers, our skills, the things that we want to do in this world, and also the impact we want to have as movement niggas, if you will. The impact that we want to have, boom, definition. The impact that we want to have, you know, it's like, let's build this idea, this creative firm, and let's do it our way. So the South is where unapologetic Black culture defines political power. The South is a
creative firm.
I was like, curious. Dribble us up court.
The South is a creative firm where we make political streetwear and work with like-minded organizations to infuse Black culture into their work through narrative strategy, digital strategy, branding, design, and all sorts of creative work. The thing for me about the South and white supremacy is I just really wanted the chance to create a work environment where white supremacy culture didn't have to reign supreme. You know, I've been in, you know, Black-led organizations, white-led organizations, everything in between, where even with the best intentions, even doing really great work, there's still these things that just show up, and like one of the examples that I love so much about what we do is when we're working with clients and we ask them about, these deadlines and this, we try to disrupt this false sense of urgency that people try to, kind of move forward as like, gotta hit this deadline. It's like, is that actually a deadline, or are you forcing yourself to cut off a creative process that could actually be really dope if we gave ourselves the time and the space to do it in a way that feels good? And I think that that's something that we've been able to do. We try to do it. Doesn't mean we do it perfectly, because obviously we're still in this capitalist system. We still have to make money. People still have their funders and all this other stuff. But like, it is one way to make a small shift in your work, is when you look at these cultures and try to say like, does this actually fit me, or is there another way?
Ooh, I love that. Is there another way? Because for some reason, white supremacy loves to trick you into thinking that there's only one option, there's only one way, when in fact there are many ways to do one particular thing. Yeah. There are many ways to do most things. And yeah, you all will get more deets, more info, more stories, more conversations, clarity about what we do, who we are, our work.
Our people.
Shout out our people, because a lot of those people will be showing up for this podcast. I hope. Actually, I already know they're going to be with the shits. And, very excited about bringing them on. But before we close, damn, I can't believe I didn't talk about this. Before we close, I will say, one of the main reasons why we're starting this podcast is because we recognize that our people, we're doing a lot of work in these streets. We're doing a lot of work with these organizations and, in the communities. And we're not dominating the, social media podcast show, the discourse, if you will. When you go on YouTube, you don't see a lot of our discourse. And I feel like for us as creatives, we recognize that it was very important to, be in that fight, and at the very least try to be in that fight. So this is, again, 7 to 10 episodes. We'll see where it gets us.
We're stepping into the war of ideas.
Stepping into the war of ideas, stepping into this podcast space, stepping into this YouTube space. I'm telling you, we're here, and I can't wait till we have the homies on this podcast. It's gonna be beautiful, shit, because it's gonna be great. But I think this brings us to our close. I am Kevin Bernat.
I'm Angela P.
And this is the Untitled podcast show about disrupting white supremacy.
Let us know what you think.
Stop white supremacy or
the N-word.
The N-word. It's up to you. Let us know, because we're down with either or. I think we could build off of either or. We're pretty confident about building off of either or.
Yeah.
So let us know. Appreciate you.
Working on my heart here.